Next case is Matthew Barkus.
Mr. Barker, I determined there's probable cause to warrant your arrest and detention. I've assigned the public defender to represent you on this possession of controlled substance charge, and you scored a 9 on the MPRA. Mr. Sullivan, is the defense requesting a Valdez Jimenez bail hearing today?
We are, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Casso, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state's going to be seeking $20,000 in bail for the possession of a stolen motor vehicle, possession of a controlled substance charges, as well as the gross misdemeanor possession of burglary tools and the other misdemeanor charges. He does score a 9 on the NPRA. He does have criminal history. He just was convicted in 2022 of possession of burglary tools out of the Second Judicial District Court. I pulled up that pre-sentence investigation report, and it reveals 9 prior felonies, 2 gross misdemeanor convictions, and 8 misdemeanor convictions. He was on that 2022 case. He was released on his own recognizance. He missed check-ins, he tested positive, he missed drug tests, and he then failed to appear during the pendency of his pretrial on that case. He was arrested, he was then released on a bail amount, and he further missed tests, and another bench warrant had to be issued during his pretrial supervision on that case. So that certainly goes to his compliance history, and that's recent in 2022. He's got a possession of drug paraphernalia from 2019, and then his history goes back to 2005. Looks like he was determined to be a habitual criminal. He got a 10 to 25 year prison sentence. He was dishonorably discharged from that sentence in 2018. His history also includes a 2004 aggravated assault felony, fleeing felony out of Arkansas, and then a 2003 possession of a controlled substance felony out of our Second Judicial District Court. He did get probation on that offense, and then it was later revoked and he went to prison. He's got a PSMV, or possession of stolen motor vehicle, in 1999, and in 1997, another felony possession of stolen motor vehicle, and then a burglary from 1993, and a separate Buick's case from 1993 as well. So plenty of criminal history, continued criminal conduct leading up to this case. So the state does believe he's a risk of flight and a danger to our community. So based on that, we're asking for the $20,000.
2 quick questions. Are any category A or B felonies being charged?
No, Your Honor. It looks like the possession of stolen motor vehicle, I believe that's a C or a D. And then so no.
All right, next question under 178.487. After yesterday's conversations, do you believe that I have the discretion to order him without bail if necessary, if I decide to go that route? If you're seeking, or if you know if the state's going to be seeking revocation on the first felony that he was out on bail for when this allegedly was committed?
I wasn't aware that he was out on bail on a felony.
Not
You
now.
just said he-
I was on no
said he-
bail. I was done with everything.
Okay, I thought you just said he posted bail on the last case. I thought you meant he was out
Oh,
on bail.
man.
No,
No,
I'm
sir.
sorry, Judge. That was adjudicated. He did plead guilty to that possession of bird tools, and he did his sentence. I was talking about how he performed on pretrial in that case.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. The request is for $20,000 bondable or 10% cash. 10% cash would be filed with $2,000 cash. So how do you feel about that bail request?
Well, Your Honor, Mr. Barkus cannot afford anything, unfortunately. He's been in the area, Reno Sparks area, for the past 33 years. He currently lives at 2071 West 4th Street, apartment number 16. He's been at that residence for the past 5 months. He lives with his ex-girlfriend. 5 years, rather. Let me correct that. He lives with his ex-girlfriend, Teresa Winus. We had placed a call this morning and left a message, no response yet. I do have the phone number if the court is so inclined. He's unemployed. He received Medicaid and food stamps. Your Honor, again, he scores a 9 on the MPRA. I know his criminal history is extensive, but I would posit to the court that the bulk of that is nonviolent. I do see the ADW out of 2005, but the current charges are nonviolent for the PCS, PSMV, and I do believe that would be a category C, the resisting, obstructing, a misdemeanor, possession of burg tools, and the drug paraphernalia. That's all misdemeanor and nonviolent property-related offenses. Judge, Mr. Barkus also explained to counsel when Ms. Casa was going through his history. She indicated a dishonorable discharge. Mr. Barkus disputes that. He believes he was granted an honorable discharge. So I would argue in light of the fact that he's been in the area for the past 33 years, he's not a flight risk. He has a current residence for the past 5 years, that we grant him an OR with pretrial services supervision, or we afford Mr. Barkus the lowest amount of bail possible. I would argue for $500. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bargus. I can't do that. You've earned this, what I'm going to say. You've been living in the criminal justice system for some 30 years. You haven't learned. You continue to victimize our society. I understand the drugs are a victimless crime, but the burglary and all the burglary incidents,
I don't have no burglary.
Just listen.
the burglary tools, the
In the time for the
possession of stolen motor vehicle.
Your Honor, can I have a moment?
Possessions-
Can I have a
Yes.
moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Go ahead, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Even the possession of stolen motor vehicles are types of burglaries, Mr. Barkus. You've got a horrendous criminal history. You don't stop. You just keep going. You haven't learned from being in prison. You haven't learned from being on probation or parole, and you just keep going. And I was going to raise your bail from what Ms. Costa was asking for, but Mr. Sullivan makes a righteous argument. I guess that most of these, a lot of these are victimless crimes, but there are some that are victim crimes also. So I'm going to go with what the state has requested in this case, $20,000 bail. That is still only $2,000 cash. That is extremely reasonable. I do recognize that you don't have the money and you're indigent and you can't afford even that, but that gives you a chance at least to get out on an extremely reasonable bail. With your criminal history and the NPRA of 9, I don't know that you deserve that. I do find that there's clear and convincing evidence he's a danger to the community and has continued to victimize this community, and that he is also a flight risk. I do find that the least restrictive means or alternatives I'm willing to consider is a incarceration, a detention with a reasonable bail, a moderate bail of $20,000, bondable or 10% cash with conditions of no contact with any victim listed in this case, check-ins with DAS at least weekly as warranted by them, and with testing for drugs or alcohol. You're to have no drugs or alcohol, no possession or consumption of any of those, and DAS will be monitoring you and testing you for the presence of any alcohol or drugs in your system if you are able to make that bail. Those will be the conditions. Anything else, counsel?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Barkus. We'll move on to the next case.
Ezekiel Dare,
Mr. Dare did determine there was probable cause to warrant your arrest and detention, and that's assigned a public defender to represent you. You scored a 10 on the NPRA. And this is also a possession of controlled substance based case. Mr. Sullivan requesting a bail hearing today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. We'll start with you.
Thank you, Your Honor. State's going to be seeking $10,000 in bail on Mr. Durr's case. He does score a 10 on the MPRA. You can see, I believe he was arrested on a parole or probation violation. That's why he was in custody to begin with. When they're doing the search when he's going into jail, obviously they find this what they believe to be a controlled substance. He does have a larger criminal history. He's on, I can't remember if it's parole or probation for the escape. The underlying charge was escape by felony prisoner. I couldn't find that charge on his criminal history, but it does show that he's currently on supervision for that charge. He also has a 2019 false impersonation and obstructing and resisting misdemeanors out of California. He's got an evading a police officer and a DUI causing bodily injury, both felonies, as well as a hit and run, death or injury felony, and receiving known stolen property felonies, all out of Santa Ana, California, stemming from a 2019, or those are from 2019 convictions. In 2016, he has a burglary conviction out of our 8th Judicial District Court, along with a grand larceny conviction out of our 8th Judicial District Court. And then finally, in 2015, a larceny from a person not amounting to robbery out of our 8th Judicial District Court. So the defendant has a pretty significant felony criminal history, on parole for escape. And with that high MPRA score, we do believe some bail is appropriate. We would ask for the $10,000.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Your Honor, my client cannot afford any bail. I see he's a 10 on the NPRA. He's lived in the area, in his current address in the Reno area for the past 4 months. He's been unemployed for the past 2 weeks. He does live on some meager savings. Looks like his reference was confirmed as to his physical address and phone number. Judge, he is interested in treatment. Obviously, the facts of this case would lend itself to treatment. I would ask this court to consider an OR directly to an inpatient treatment with IEP transport if the court is considering an OR. Otherwise, we would ask this court to consider a $500 bail. Thank you. I'll submit.
Ms. Casso, are you?
Can I have a
opposed to
moment,
that?
Your Honor? Can I have a moment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Judge. We're ready to go forward.
Thank you, Ms. Casso. Are you opposed to that last request for an OR if there was a direct transport from IEP to their rehabilitation center or residential confinement or some type of treatment?
Your Honor, I am, because he's currently under the supervision of parole and probation. One of his conditions is not to consume or controlled substances. So I believe that would be the better place for him to seek treatment, is through his actual parole officer versus using our court for that. So I'm opposed to that.
All right, once again, Mr. Dare, you're no stranger to the criminal justice system. You've got plenty of felonies on your record and in your history. I do find there's clear and convincing evidence that you are a danger to the community and also a flight risk. I note that you scored 2 on the failures to appear within the last 24 months. So I find both flight risk and danger to the community evidence in this case. And I do find that a reasonable moderate bail or slightly less, maybe even is warranted for your incarceration. I do find that to be the least restrictive means, even given your individualized characteristics of being indigent, not being able to afford any bail. I am not willing to OR you. You can certainly seek that at a later date if there is a bed available and you get an IEP transport agreeing to transport you to the bed for treatment. You can make a request, the court will consider it, or you can make a request through your probation officer and we'll see if we can get you into a center. But you've had plenty of opportunity to curtail your behavior based upon your prior criminal histories. And that's when it should have been addressed. And now we have an additional allegation here. So I'm going to follow the state's request of a $10,000 bail, bondable or 10% cash. So that's only $1,000 cash. I know that seems like a lot to you, but that's an extremely reasonable bail with conditions of contacting DAS within 48 hours of your release. Check-ins with DAS at least weekly as required and determined by them. And with testing, you're to have no drugs, no alcohol, and you'll be tested for any presence of alcohol or drugs randomly by DAS. Those will be the conditions. Any questions or anything else, Mr. Sullivan?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Casso?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be the order. Thank you. We'll move on to the next case.
Thank you.
Gali